Hey, welcome to a new video. RAF Folkingham is a former Royal Air Force base in Lincolnshire, United Kingdom that has transformed into a remarkable vehicle graveyard. Opened in 1940, the base initially served as a decoy airfield for RAF Spitalgate, complete with fake aircraft and personnel to mislead enemy forces. It saw heavy use during both World War II and the Cold War. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, it was repurposed by RAF Bomber Command as a launch site for the PGM-17 Thor, an intermediate-range ballistic missile. The base was officially closed in 1963. Today, the site is known for its vast collection of decaying military vehicles, as well as its mid-20th century machinery, including tractors, trucks, cranes, and fire engines. The main runway, running north to south, is lined with hundreds of these relics, creating a surreal landscape that draws urban explorers and photographers alike. Though now private property, primarily used for agriculture, the remnants of the airfield and its vehicle graveyard remain a captivating destination.
Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video.
The Quarry of Forgotten Cars in France is a remarkable site where a collection of abandoned vehicles, mainly from World War II, was discovered. Hidden in a quarry in the French countryside, the location gained fame for its historical significance and the mystery surrounding the forgotten cars. It's believed that the vehicles were hidden at the start of the war to prevent them from being seized by the Nazis during the German occupation of France. Many of the cars are now rusted or damaged, indicating they have been untouched for decades. The discovery was made by Belgian photographer Vincent Michael, who documented the site and its vehicles. While a few have been recovered for auction, most remain in the quarry, too damaged to be moved. The collection features cars from the 1930s and 40s, showcasing a wide array of vintage designs that offer a snapshot of that era's automotive history. Covered in rust and decay, the cars tell a story of loss and resilience, making the site a compelling destination for historians and car enthusiasts alike. Deep in the Red Sea lies a shipment of Norton 16H motorcycles from World War II. Specially designed for military use, these bikes were lost along the cargo aboard the SS Thistlegorm, a British armed merchant ship bombed by the German Luftwaffe in October 1941. Today, these submerged motorcycles attract divers from around the world, fascinated by their surprisingly well-preserved condition and the uniqueness of the location. They represent a rare fusion of history and adventure, with the past literally rising beneath the waves. In February 2018, German photographer Tobias Frederick won the title of Underwater Photographer of the Year with a stunning panoramic shot of the Norton bikes. Interestingly, other World War II-era motorcycles have also been discovered deep in forests, as well as underwater, including one that might be a Red October L300 or an original DKW Lexus 300. To this day, the Ilyushin Il-2 Stormovik remains one of the most mass-produced military aircraft in history. Joseph Stalin famously declared that these planes were as essential to the Red Army as air and bread. Thousands were built during World War II to fight the Nazis. This 11.5-meter-long aircraft, heavily armored, earned the nickname Flying Tank among enemy troops. The propeller-driven fighter carried a pilot and rear gunner, with a wingspan of nearly 15 meters. One wreck was recovered from a lake in Russia. The aircraft had been shot down on August 22, 1943, during a German attack near the Norwegian border. Captain Alexander Kalichev, then 34 years old, managed to safely land the damaged plane on the lake. Years later, the wreck was retrieved by Wings of Victory, a Russian organization that restores historical aircraft. Using floats, the plane was brought to the surface and is now being transported for restoration. The Bristol Beaufighter was a British twin-engine aircraft that played a crucial role in World War II. Renowned for its versatility, it served as a long-range fighter, ground attack aircraft, and torpedo bomber. It was one of the first planes equipped with airborne interception radar, making it effective against German nighttime air raids early in the war. Multiple Beaufighter wrecks have been discovered underwater, particularly in the Mediterranean region. One notable wreck was found off the coast of Cephalonia in Greece, where the plane was shot down by German anti-aircraft fire on July 19, 1944. Maritime archaeologists conducted research into the wreck and its historical context. In another case, parts of the Beaufighter were discovered near St. Julian's Bay in Malta. That wreck has become a popular diving spot for military history enthusiasts. In 1999, divers were granted permission by British authorities to recover parts of the aircraft for display in a local museum. In 1943, during intense fighting on the Eastern Front, a German Focke-Wulf 190 fighter plane crashed into a remote swampy forest near Leningrad. The pilot likely encountered enemy fire or technical failure during a mission. The aircraft vanished into the marsh and remained untouched for decades, as nature slowly reclaimed the area. It wasn't until 1989, 45 years later, that aviation enthusiasts discovered the wreck, which was astonishingly well preserved. The swamp's low oxygen levels helped protect many parts, including instruments and weaponry. Even the original Luftwaffe camouflage and markings were still visible on the wings, an extremely rare sight for aircraft submerged that long. The discovery stunned historians and offered a unique glimpse into the air war over the Soviet Union, as if the aircraft had just emerged from the past. The plane was recovered and placed on display at the Central Air Force Museum in Monino, Russia. Its exceptional condition stands as a tribute to World War II aviation and reminds us of the many untold stories hidden on former battlefields. The Musashi, along with her sister ship Yamato, was one of the largest battleships ever constructed and a symbol of Japan's naval power during World War II. Commissioned in 1942, the vessel was equipped with enormous 46cm or 18.1-inch guns and heavily armored, though its massive size also made it a prime target. Despite its potential, the Musashi saw limited action until the Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944, one of the largest naval battles in history. On October 24, 1944, during the opening phase of the battle in the Siberian Sea, the Musashi was repeatedly attacked by U.S. carrier-based aircraft. In a matter of hours, it was hit by at least 17 bombs and 19 torpedoes. Heavily damaged and flooding, the ship eventually capsized and sank, taking over 1,000 crew members with it. The wreck remained undiscovered for decades, until 2015, when it was located by a team led by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. It was resting more than a kilometer beneath the surface. The Musashi is an exceptionally well-preserved relic of the battleship era, powerful yet ultimately vulnerable to air attacks. The Vimoutiers Tiger tank is a German tank abandoned near the village of Vimoutiers in Normandy, France, during World War II. It was part of the retreating German forces following failed counterattacks against the Allied landings in June 1944. On August 21, 1944, it was reportedly left behind due to mechanical failure or lack of fuel, and the crew detonated it to prevent capture. For years, the wreck lay damaged and partially buried by the roadside, further deteriorated by scavengers looking for scrap. In the 1970s, the town decided to preserve the tank as a monument due to its historical value. Today, it's one of the few surviving original Tiger I tanks and serves as a stark reminder of the fierce battles that took place in the region. Though visibly damaged, it's been stabilized to prevent further decay and remains on display at the edge of the village. The tank's a popular stop for historians, tank enthusiasts, and tourists alike. In 2012, an astonishingly well-preserved fighter plane was discovered in the Sahara Desert, 70 years after it crash-landed during World War II. While exploring the Egyptian desert, Polish oil worker Jacob Perka stumbled upon an American Curtiss P-40 Kitty Hawk, roughly 320 kilometers from the nearest city. The pilot, believed to be 24-year-old Dennis Coping, encountered trouble in 1942 and managed to make a safe landing in the sand. Military historian Andy Saunders concluded that the British sergeant likely survived the crash, as a photo showed a parachute set up like a makeshift shelter beside the plane. The radio and batteries had been removed from the aircraft, suggesting that Coping attempted to make repairs. Since no human remains were found, it's believed he set out on foot and ultimately succumbed to the desert's harsh conditions. This discovery was described as the aviation equivalent of Tutankhamun's tomb. Based on photographs, the serial number appeared to be ET-574, indicating the plane may have once been flown by Canadian ace James Stocky Edwards. $1 Million Point is the name of a location where massive amounts of American military equipment were dumped into the Pacific Ocean after World War II. Dramatic underwater images reveal the scale of the waste. Vehicles and gear submerged just off the coast of Espiritu Santo and Vanuatu. The United States had used the island as a key staging base for operations against Japanese forces. Among the wreckage lie bulldozers, jeeps, trucks, trailers, forklifts, tractors, clothing, and even Coca-Cola bottles. When negotiations with the local population over the sale of the equipment failed, the U.S. deemed it cheaper to dispose of the supplies in the sea, rather than just ship them back home. Stories about the dumping vary, with many questioning why valuable civilian goods weren't just donated to the local people, who could have greatly benefited from them. The U.S. Navy's construction brigade, the Seabees, built a ramp down into the ocean, where soldiers drove the vehicles into the water, locked the wheels, and jumped out at the last moment. According to official Navy records from Operation Roll-Up, equipment was only to be retained as long as it remained useful. The Kugelpanzer is a unique and enigmatic armored vehicle from World War II. It's one of the most unusual tanks ever built, characterized by its spherical shape. It has a minimalist design on the outside, consisting of a cylindrical body in the middle where one person could fit. Two hemispherical wheels are placed on both sides of the central part and serve as its means of propulsion. The vehicle has thin armor plating of approximately 5mm, although the exact composition of the armor is unknown. However, why this vehicle was built and what its purpose was remains a subject of debate. The most common theory is that it was likely used as an experimental reconnaissance vehicle, though its low speed and limited visibility raise questions about the effectiveness of that role. There's also one example of this vehicle that exists today. It's displayed at the Kubinka Tank Museum in Moscow, Russia, where it's listed as exhibition number 37. It's speculated that this vehicle was captured by the Red Army. Access and photography inside this vehicle is strictly prohibited, making it difficult to verify the internal layout and components of the vehicle. Truk Lagoon, located in the Pacific Ocean, houses one of the most famous underwater cemeteries in the world. During World War II, Truk served as a major Japanese naval base and became the target of a devastating air attack in February 1944, known as Operation Hailstone. The attack resulted in the sinking of numerous Japanese ships and aircraft, creating the Truk Lagoon Cemetery. Truk Lagoon is scattered with the remnants of over 60 ships and 250 aircraft, most of which are left on the seabed. The sunken vessels include battleships, cruisers, destroyers, submarines, cargo ships, and even small aircraft carriers. These wrecks now serve as artificial reefs and attract divers from all around the world. Exploring the Truk Lagoon Cemetery is like a journey back in time. The wrecks are remarkably well preserved thanks to the calm, protected waters of the lagoon and the absence of strong currents. If you're a diving enthusiast, you can swim through the eerie corridors of sunken warships here, providing you with a unique diving experience. Adolf Hitler was an ambitious man, and one of his ambitions was to build the greatest cannon ever. The Gustav gun was over 46 meters long and over 12 meters high, and weighed almost 1,350 tons, and weighing almost 1,350 tons. The purpose of the cannon was to destroy the fortifications on the French border that lay along the Maginot Line. As you might expect, the cannon was not particularly easy to use. For example, it took long to fire and cost a whopping $67 million. In addition, it required a crew of 250 soldiers and engineers. The Gustav cannon ended up firing only 48 shots because it turned out that its size made it an easy target for the Allied pilots. It was therefore also quickly decommissioned, and only later were the remains of the cannons found in eastern Germany. The ship discovered through Google Earth is quite mysterious. This is mainly because one does not know if it's a World War II ship or a secret ship ready to provide a safe haven for the world's elite in the event of the apocalypse. The discovery was made by a Google Earth user who called himself Earth Watchman. In response to an anonymous tip, he discovered an out-of-place landmark off the coast of Antarctica. Later, a YouTube video revealed more details about the truly mysterious vessel. It's believed to be a 121-meter-long ice ship. At first glance, it looks like a block of ice, but if you look closely, you can see the details of a cruise ship, complete with chimneys and a deck. Some people think that there might be a former secret Nazi base here, because there's rumors that the Nazis were in Antarctica at the time. During World War II, the G4M Betty was a long-range twin-engine bomber used by the Imperial Japanese Navy. While it was praised for its impressive range and bomb load, it was also notorious for its vulnerability due to a lack of armor and self-sealing fuel tanks. The Betty played a major role in Japan's aerial campaigns across the Pacific. One of the most haunting remnants of this aircraft can be found on Ballale Island, part of the Shortland Islands near Bougainville and the Solomon Islands. The island was occupied by Japanese forces, who built an airfield there using brutal forced labor and prisoners of war. Several G4M Bettys operated from or passed through Ballale. After heavy Allied bombings in the island's isolation, many aircraft were destroyed or simply abandoned in the jungle. In one particularly striking spot, an almost intact G4M lies, slowly being overtaken by nature. Its fuselage and wings are now cloaked in moss, rust, and even ivy, silent witnesses to the island's violent past. This forgotten relic serves as a ghostly monument to the Japanese Allied and civilian lives lost during the Pacific conflict. Today, the wreck is occasionally visited by military historians, adventurers, and curious tourists. The Landkreuzer P-1000 Ratte was a proposed design for a super heavy tank during World War II. This tank design is said to have been proposed in June 1942 by Edward Grote, a director at Krupp. The plan was to build a 1,000-ton tank, much heavier than the Panzer. which was at 188 tons, the heaviest tank to ever been built. It was envisioned that the tank would have a fully tracked chassis and would utilize main gun turrets. Additionally, the tank was proposed to include a garage for 2 engines and a sickbay. The project received approval from Adolf Hitler, who showed interest in its development. However, the tank was ultimately cancelled in early 1943. This vehicle was seen as a super heavy tank capable of performing complex tasks on the front lines and potentially altering the course of history.
The Moss tank, also known as the Panzerkampfwagen VII Moss, was a super heavy tank developed by Nazi Germany during World War II. It was intended to be the largest and most heavily armored tank ever built. However, only 2 prototypes were constructed, and neither saw combat. Today, one of these prototypes is on display at the Kubinka Tank Museum near Moscow, Russia. The tank was a technical marvel, weighing approximately 188 tons, with exceptionally thick armor up to 8.7 inches or 220 millimeters in some places. It was powered by a massive 1200 horsepower engine, allowing it to reach a top speed of about 13 miles per hour or 21 kilometers per hour. After the war, the remaining Moss prototype was captured by the Soviet Union and taken to the Kubinka Tank Museum, where it remains on display. The tank's enormous size and advanced technology make it a captivating attraction for visitors, especially those interested in military history and technology. Although the tank never achieved its intended combat purposes, just the sight of it's enough to evoke awe in others. Could you imagine what it would be like if this thing had been deployed in combat?
Flamenco Beach, located on the smallest island of Culebra in Puerto Rico, is often hailed as one of the most beautiful beaches in the Caribbean. But amid the paradise lies an unexpected sight: rusting American tanks, relics of past military activity. The US Navy used this place for gunnery and bombing practice from the early 20th century until 1975. During this period, tanks and other vehicles were used as targets. After years of public protests and political pressure, the Navy withdrew, but left much of its equipment behind. The tanks are now covered in graffiti and slowly being consumed by salt, sand, and sea air. Some are partially submerged or have been transformed into informal snorkeling attractions. Locals and tourists have embraced the remains, blending them into the landscape in creative ways. Once machines of war, these tanks now stand as artistic monuments, popular photo ops for some, and silent symbols of a turbulent history for others.
During a snowy winter in 1978, a man drove a tank through his town and used it as a snowplow. Years later, both became infamous. The man, who was from Germany, owned a museum of World War II gear. In 2015, authorities forced their way into his home in the municipality of Heikendorf. Although they had expected to find works of art, they couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the largest occupancy of his basement, a giant Panther tank. One of the most feared tanks that was terrifying in its firepower, speed, and armor during the war. It ended up in a basement of an 84-year-old man. It was stored alongside a host of other Nazi memorabilia, including mannequins dressed in Nazi uniforms, SS lights, and the same warrior statue with a sword that once stood in front of Hitler's chancellery in Berlin. It took the soldiers about 9 hours to remove everything. The man was eventually fined nearly $300,000 for the illegal belongings.
In 2015, the wreck of the aircraft carrier USS Independence was discovered off the coast of California, near the Farallon Islands. Although it had been underwater since 1951, the ship was astonishingly well preserved. Sonar scans even revealed an aircraft still inside the hangar, as if it was waiting to launch. The Independence served actively in the Pacific from 1943 to 1945 and took part in several World War II operations. After the war, it was used during nuclear testing at Bikini Atoll, sustaining considerable damage. It was later brought back to San Francisco for scientific studies on the effects of radiation in warships. In 1951, the vessel was intentionally sunk. The wreck was mapped using an advanced underwater robot called Echo Ranger. While there are some holes visible in the hangar deck, most of the structure remains intact. It's also estimated that around 300 other wrecks lie in the surrounding area. The Silbervogel was a design for a rocket-powered suborbital bomb aircraft created by Eugen Songer and Irene Brett in the late 1930s for the Nazi Germany. It was conceived as part of a project which aimed to develop long-range bombers capable of reaching the United States from Europe. It was intended to be a suborbital aircraft, capable of flying at high altitudes at extreme speeds, and it would be powered by a rocket engine. The plan was to launch the aircraft from a 2-mile-long monorail track, accelerated by a rocket-powered sled. Once the guide rail ended, the main rocket engine would ignite, propelling the aircraft to its maximum velocity.
The aircraft was intended to glide back to Earth after reaching peak altitude, enabling reuse and cost savings. Despite the design, a physical prototype was never built. The project remained largely on paper, and the end of World War II brought an end to the further development. Believe it or not, the design and concepts contributed to the development of later spaceplanes. For example, the regeneratively cooled rocket engine became a lasting feature in the design of future rocket engines. Deep in the Libyan desert, one of the most astonishing World War II relics was discovered, a sand-covered vehicle belonging to the British Long-Range Desert Group, LRDG. This elite unit was established in 1940 for reconnaissance and raids behind enemy lines in North Africa. Operating far from supply chains, they relied on expert navigation and heavily modified vehicles to endure the harsh desert. The abandoned vehicle was found decades later in near-perfect condition, likely left behind after a failed mission due to mechanical failure or fuel shortage. Thanks to the dry climate, it was remarkably well preserved, complete with personal items, supplies, and weapons. Amazingly, even the original tires remained intact, and maps with handwritten notes were still in the glove compartment, as if the crew might return at any moment. Typically a Chevrolet 30 CWT truck, the vehicle was adapted for the desert with extra fuel tanks, water containers, radios, and even machine guns. The find underscores the isolation and risks of these missions, where even minor setbacks could prove fatal under the unforgiving desert sun. The V-2 rocket was the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile and was primarily used against Allied targets, particularly in the later stages of the war. It was powered by a liquid fuel engine and had a range of about 200 miles or 320 kilometers. It could reach speeds of up to 3,480 miles per hour or 5,600 kilometers per hour and could carry a warhead of about 1 ton. The rocket was launched vertically and reached a maximum altitude of about 60 miles or 97 kilometers before descending at supersonic speeds towards its target. Approximately 4,000 V-2 rockets were assembled at various locations, with Peenemünde located at the Harz Mountain in central Germany, being the primary production site. The production of the V-2 rocket was a complex and large-scale operation involving various components such as engines, guidance systems, and warheads. They were transported to large sites and fired at targets in England, Belgium, and other Allied areas. Many of the German scientists who work on the V-2 program, including Werner von Braun, were later recruited by the United States as part of Operation Paperclip. In April 2023, a rare T-34-76 tank from World War II was recovered from the Don River, near a village in Russia. The discovery was made by divers, soldiers from the Western Military District, and experts from Patriot Park, a military history complex near Moscow. The tank had been submerged for over 60 years and was likely swept into the river during an attempted bridge crossing. Built in the famous Stalingrad tractor factory, now Volgograd, the vehicle represents one of the Soviet military's most iconic tank models. It's especially valuable today, as most T-34s were destroyed in early battles with Nazi Germany. During the recovery operation, additional military remnants surfaced, including pontoons and transport vehicles. The T-34 was found in surprisingly good condition, and restoration teams hoped to make it operational once again. The discovery not only brings a tangible chapter of war history to life, but also strengthens Russia's military heritage, as well as its national memory. The SS Alkimos was a Greek ship built in 1943 for World War II. During the construction, one of the workers was killed in a violent manner. Since then, other things have happened that would cause multiple spirits to hang out on this ship. People who have worked on the ship frequently discover that their tools were mysteriously moved. They also heard footsteps following them when they were alone at night. Workers who worked on the ship or just went near the ship mysteriously became ill, injured, or even lost their lives. Over the next few years, the Alkimos was sold a total of 8 times. The reason for this was because each owner had to deal with tragedies in their lives until they decided to sell the ship again. The ship finally sailed into a reef in 1963 and sank to the bottom of the sea north of Perth, Australia. Today it's a popular dive site, but paranormal things are said to still happen around the ship.
On the windswept shores of Atka Island in Alaska lies the rusted wreckage of a B-24D Liberator, a silent remnant of World War II. This heavy bomber, part of the U.S. Army Air Forces, once played a key role in America's defense against Japanese attacks in the Northwest Pacific. However, the Atka plane never saw combat. In 1942, it was forced to make an emergency landing due to engine trouble and has remained at the site ever since. The Ilyushin campaign is often a forgotten chapter of World War II history, but it was a crucial and extremely harsh front, marked by isolation and brutal weather. The B-24D was one of America's most versatile aircraft, capable of carrying heavy bomb loads over long distances. Though the crew survived landing, the aircraft was too difficult to recover in the rugged terrain. Rather than destroy or salvage it, the wreck was simply abandoned on the tundra. Today, the Atka B-24D lies in an eerie state of decay. Its fuselage is twisted by decades of snow, wind, and salty air. Wings and engines are covered in moss, lichens, and nesting seabirds, far from any battlefield or museum.
What if I told you that one of the most powerful warships in history, the Bismarck, is still as almost good as new at the bottom of the ocean? It was discovered in 1989 by American oceanographer Robert Ballard, the same man who found the Titanic. His talent for finding historic wrecks led him to the Bismarck. At a depth of more than 4,572 meters in the ocean, a few hundred kilometers west of the city of Brest in France. What makes the 41,000-ton Bismarck so infamous is its history as one of the world's most powerful warships. At one time, it was the key to the Nazis' plan to blockade Britain. In 1941, during one of its sightings, practically the entire British Army was sent out to destroy it in the name of control of the North Atlantic. It took a week-long chase, a torpedo, and an all-night fight to finally sink the ship, along with 2,300 German sailors.
Lying on the floor of the Red Sea near Egypt's Sinai Peninsula is one of World War II's most famous shipwrecks, the SS Thistlegorm. This armed British merchant ship was launched in 1940 and carried military supplies for Allied forces in North America. In October 1941, while anchored in the Gulf of Suez, it was bombed by German aircraft. The cargo included ammunition, motorcycles, trucks, and even locomotives, and they all exploded, tearing the ship apart and sending it to the seafloor. The wreck was largely forgotten until Jacques Cousteau rediscovered it in 1956, with help from local fishermen. Today, the Thistlegorm rests upright at around 30 meters deep and has become an underwater museum. Divers can still see the cargo: Norton motorcycles, Bedford trucks, rifles, boots, aircraft parts, and ammunition, many still in place after more than 80 years. A massive breach in the midsection reveals the force of the blast, but much of the ship remains remarkably intact. Coral and marine life have overtaken the wreckage, creating a surreal blend of war and nature. The Panther tank was a medium tank developed by Nazi Germany during World War II. It was intended as a counterpart to the Soviet T-34 and as a replacement for the Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks. The Panther is often considered one of the best tanks of World War II due to its excellent combination of firepower, mobility, and protection. It featured sloped armor, a powerful main gun, and good mobility. The Panther saw action for the first time during the Battle of Kursk in 1943. However, the Panther tank had some issues. Early models suffered from mechanical and reliability problems, and more Panthers were lost due to engine issues than enemy action during the Battle of Kursk. The tank also had a fundamental problem with the gunner's sight, making it difficult to quickly locate targets. Its combat capabilities influenced the development of heavier tanks by the Allies. It's noteworthy that the Panther tank was captured by enemy troops on certain occasions. Russian forces captured several Panthers and used them against the Nazis on the Eastern Front. However, they were abandoned due to the complexity and difficulty in repairing them. On the remote, rugged island of Shikotan, part of the Kuril chain between Japan and Russia, rusting Japanese tanks from World War II still lie abandoned. These vehicles were once part of Japan's Imperial Defense Forces, stationed there to maintain control over the Pacific. In August 1945, just before the official end of the war, the Soviet Union launched a military campaign to seize the Kurils. Fierce fighting broke out on Shikotan as part of a broader Soviet offensive against Japan. Following Japan's surrender shortly after, the troops withdrew, leaving their equipment behind. Since then, the island has remained mostly deserted, and the tanks have been left to the mercy of time and weather. Covered in moss and shrubbery, they stand as quiet reminders of a long-forgotten battle in the far northeast of Asia. For military historians and adventurous travelers, Shikotan offers a fascinating open-air museum where nature and history intertwine.
The USS Lexington, also known as Lady Lex, holds a significant place in the history of maritime warfare. As one of the iconic aircraft carriers of the United States, the USS Lexington played a crucial role in World War II. It participated in nearly every major operation in the Pacific Ocean. Aircraft squadrons engaged in intense aerial combat, successfully destroying 372 enemy planes in the air and an additional 475 on the ground. They had a profound impact on the outcome of various confrontations and provided vital support to Allied forces. In 2018, the ship was discovered in the Coral Sea, approximately 497 miles or 800 kilometers off the coast of Australia. While the ship played a pivotal role, it was scuttled in May of 1942 to prevent it from falling into enemy hands. The discovery of the ship in relatively good condition marked a remarkable achievement in the field of marine archaeology.
Tourists visiting the Micronesian archipelago, Palau, often stumble across traces of a forgotten war. One such discovery came when kayakers found the wreck of a Japanese Aichi E-13A reconnaissance plane, lying upside down in the riverbed, wings spread as if it's still waiting for its final mission. The wreck's now overgrown with moss and coral, blending seamlessly into Palau's lush tropical landscape. While the site is peaceful today, Palau was once the scene of intense fighting between Japanese and Allied forces, particularly around the island of Ballale. The aircraft discovery is far from unique. Palau hosts more than 60 wartime wrecks, scattered across its seas, jungles, and caves. Not far from the river lies another near-intact Japanese fighter, hidden in a cave, which is now a popular dive spot. These wrecks are part of what is known as the Lost Fleet of the Rock Islands and draw thousands of divers and history buffs each year. Thanks to its rich underwater heritage, Palau is widely celebrated as the wreck diving capital of the world. The first X and Heinzel HS-293 were some of the first precision-guided weapons developed by Nazi Germany. They made their debut around the time of the Allied attack on Solano in September 1943. These radio-controlled weapons posed a new challenge to fleet defense and scorned hits on Allied ships, opening a new chapter in modern warfare. The Heinzel HS-293 was a radio-controlled glide bomb with a rocket motor. Designed as a guided anti-ship missile, it used an autopilot to maintain a straight course and could be launched from a bomber at a sufficient distance to keep the aircraft out of reach of anti-aircraft fire. A bombarder guided the missile with a joystick and a radio control. The Fritz X was an armored guided anti-ship bomb. The Fritz X carried bombers and was guided to its target by a crew member in the mothership, using a joystick. These weapons were designed to be dropped from an aircraft and guided to their targets, making them forerunners of today's smart bombs.
It was by complete coincidence during a harpooning contest that a Junkers Ju-87 aircraft was discovered in the Adriatic Sea off the coast of Croatia. Divers found it in September of 2014 and made history with this find. The Junkers Ju-87 was both a dive bomber and a ground attack aircraft. When it made a dive, you could hear a terrifying siren-like sound, giving people on the ground a great fright. The plane was found standing on the seabed at a depth of about 28 meters. For a plane that's been in the ocean for decades, it's still almost completely intact. Moreover, it doesn't really look like a wreck.
On the remote island of Bolshoy Tyuters in the Baltic Sea, north of Estonia, lies a mysterious collection of abandoned World War II military vehicles. During the war, the island served as a strategic Soviet outpost, used for air defense, communications, and radar installations to monitor German movements in the region. Due to its isolation and rugged landscape, it played a crucial role in securing the eastern Baltic. After the war, the island lost its military significance, and Soviet forces withdrew. What remained were trucks, jeeps, and other Red Army equipment, vehicles that were never recovered. Over the decades, these rusting relics have been left to the elements. The combination of sea winds, damp forests, and harsh climate has slowly fused them with the landscape. Some still stand frozen along the shoreline, while others are nearly invisible beneath the moss and brush. For visitors today, these silent remnants form a powerful reminder of a forgotten front in the war across Northern Europe. Have you ever discovered something from World War II? Let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos we've made, click one on the screen or take a look at the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.